Hi, my name is Dr. Daniel Fox, licensed psychologist in the state of Texas, and in today's video we're going to talk about borderline personality disorder and those regressions when we go back, or we're taking some back steps and we get resurgence of maladaptive behaviors, beliefs, and patterns. And this is really common. What I like to do is when I first start working with a lot of my clients, I like to talk about sort of the trajectory of treatment. And everybody's is different, everybody's is unique. But there are some things that occur that are common, such as regressions and backstepping. And those regressions, what they are, is that so you'll make some successes. So let's talk about self-harm. Let's say that a common coping strategy was self-harm. And so when you encounter a high degree of stress or anxiety or frustration, the individual cuts themselves, burns themselves, hits themselves, whatever it may be. And that is the self-harm act. So we start working on identifying the self-harm, managing the self-harm, and you start to see some successes. You start to see that when that individual becomes stressed or agitated or frustrated, they don't engage in the maladaptive beliefs, behaviors, and patterns that causes them to self-harm. And so you have some successes. They start using adaptive strategies, and it's really exciting. And for a lot of mental health providers, it's very exciting. Like, oh, they're getting better, and it's super great, and everything's going, and the individual feels very positive and very strong. And then you start to go forward, and then something happens. Maybe the stressor or the frustration becomes so great, or at other times, the individual stops taking care of themselves. Maybe they're having sleeping issues. Sleep is critical. And what happens is when your resources aren't that strong and you encounter all of this stress and frustration, that lure of those default behaviors, the lure of those maladaptive patterns, as in the example of self-harm, they become so great. So what happens is that instead of using those new adaptive strategies and building those as becoming automatic, the individual then goes back to self-harm. And it's not as if the individual, and I think there's a lot of confusion about, particularly with the BPD and individuals with BPD traits, because I think people on the outside, what they perceive is that, oh, well, that person's just making a choice to go back to self-harm. Now, we can say there's a degree of choice, right? A degree of choice. But you can't say that person's sitting there saying, well, you know what? I could do my mindfulness. I could engage in exercise. I could engage in other strategies. But I'm just going to go back to the self-harm stuff. That isn't how it works. That may be how the outside world perceives it, but that isn't actually how it works, because that becomes so great. And the lure of those default behaviors and those maladaptive patterns become so great that the individual goes back to that and they self-harm. And these are what are called regressions, and these are what are called backstepping to those old maladaptive beliefs, behaviors, and patterns. And it is part of the process. Now, it's not for everybody. Not everybody goes all the way back to severe self-harm or severe maladaptive patterns. You may go back, let's say it was 100%, whatever that may mean. And then as you learn strategies and adaptive strategies, then you start to go back. And when you go back, you regress. Maybe it's 80% or 50% or 40%. That's still a success. That's why it's always important to get a metric when you go back to those maladaptive behaviors and patterns, or if you go back to those maladaptive beliefs, behaviors, and patterns, that how severe is it? How much did it go back? And then we have to build that insight. You have to build that awareness. So we got to slow down. Don't accuse yourself. Don't say this means that I'm a failure. This means that I'm no good. This means that my BPD is stronger than me. It is not, and that is absolutely not true. We all regress. We all go back. And it's important to say, okay, this is where I was, this is what happened, and I'm going to go forward and utilize those adaptive strategies, utilize those positive behaviors so that you don't keep going back. Because what happens is when they come to see me, those maladaptive patterns are so great and their life is in so much chaos and confusion and frustration and all of these things, that once it starts to change, and change is hard, right? I mean, there's a lot of fear and there's a lot of issues, and there's a lot of, change is not easy, but it's possible, and you can have a happier life. You can have a life with less self-harm. You can have a life with better relationship. You can have a life of asserting yourself and getting your needs met. It is possible. But I think what becomes a problem is that BPD, that core content and that BPD lens, that it becomes this, you become your own worst enemy. And your own worst enemy tells you, see, well, you went back to cutting, so you might as well just keep cutting and cut deeper and cut longer. Or you might as well hit yourself harder. Or you might as well, do restricting or whatever it may be. And so you fall into that, you go back to that cycle, and your BPD wins. But your BPD doesn't need to win. You can continue to beat it, going back to those adaptive strategies. Don't charge yourself, don't accuse yourself, don't say, see, this means, nope. All it means and all it represents is that you slid back. You had a back step. You had a regression. It's fine. Go forward. Okay? And also take a look, right? What caused it? How severe was the maladaptive pattern that you engaged in? Typically, a lot of my clients, it's not that 100% when they first came to see me. Typically what it is, it may be 80% or maybe 50%. So we kind of look at it and I usually ask them, so how severe would you say it was? All right. So on that scale, 100%, they usually give me a percentage. And then we go forward. And we continue to go forward. And we continue to beat those maladaptive patterns. And, as I'm saying this, I'm thinking like a boxer in a ring, right? You can train and you can train. And then when you get in the ring, don't expect not to get hit or get knocked down, because that's part of the process. But don't stay down. You have to get back up. You have to get back in the ring. And your BPD knows how to hit you, right? It knows how to jive and hit you. But get back up. And that's part of staying in treatment. That's part of continuing to use those adaptive strategies that move you forward, that give you a sense of empowerment and strength. Those are the things that will help you move forward. And I hope that this has been a helpful video for you. If you enjoyed it, I hope that you'll subscribe. Please leave some comments. And thank you all very much for your time and attention. Have a good day. Bye.